We are very pleased to welcome with us this afternoon Jim Graywolf Petruzzi. He is the United Western Lenape Chief Ambassador and a teacher, guide and ceremonialist at the White Otter Academy. Jim has a long history of activism, having marched with Dr. Martin Luther King and protested against the Vietnam War. Now his focus is primarily climate change and the unity and collaboration needed to make the necessary changes a reality. This began with Standing Rock and the Water is Life movement. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will offer them up during the session. So, good morning, Jim. It's lovely to see you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. It is a beautiful morning here. It's sunny. And an eagle just flew by, so I think that's a good omen for us.
That's lovely. That's lovely. So I understand that you brought with you on the telephone Pine Ridge community, as they don't have internet. So I'd like to offer out a warm welcome to them as well. Let everybody know that they are with us today, and that if there's anything that they want to ask or add in, then obviously they'll be doing that through you, Jim. But it's a great pleasure to welcome them with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They follow many of the things we do. This small group of friends there, yeah, they don't have good internet, so they are listening in. They now have 21 people there, so they're ready for us.
Fantastic. So that's a really good example of how you bring communities together and use the virtual format, which is sort of what your focus is today. So it all started with Standing Rock. Can you sort of tell us why that came about, how that came about, what that was all about, really?
Yeah, I can. To place me into the time there, I had traveled around for a lot of years, more than I like to remember, living with different cultures and learning their ways. I am Romany Gypsy by birth and Native American blood, as you mentioned. So, yeah, I'm a mongrel. When Standing Rock started, nobody was hearing anything. It wasn't mentioned in the mainstream media, of course. If it was, the information was misleading or completely false. So I got a phone call from a few people in Pine Ridge, actually, not Standing Rock, that I knew. My adoptive father was from there. So I really didn't want to lead a virtual group. I had other virtual groups I was already doing. So at first I said no. And then I got a second call by other elders. And I said, okay, I'll do the best I can. I just, I don't know what's involved. Anyway, I put a group up and put Standing Rock protectors because we wanted to emphasize the point that they were protecting their land and their resources. And then also protesting the fact of the way this was being done. Not too long after that, I don't know, a couple months maybe, I was in touch with the people in Standing Rock, and I went up and met with LaDonna and her husband Miles, and we sat there. She gave my wife and I passes to record people, so I have a lot of recordings of different folks who were there. And her big thing was, please just do anything you can to get the word out. Don't do anything false. Keep it calm, keep it peaceful. A big thing was keep it peaceful. And so I went back, and by then we already had about 20,000 people in the group. Quickly, that grew to about 160,000 people globally. And I think I had 9 or 10 admins working with me at that point. So we were on 24/7, literally, adding people, commenting, getting things from Standing Rock, getting a ton of questions from people around the world who didn't even know anything, didn't even know about a reservation. So that's kind of how it started from my end.
Yeah. Similar sort of stories that we were hearing Indra speaking earlier about, when you're there in the thick of it, the news doesn't get out, and what news does get out is not very balanced quite often. And it's also to make sure that we hear what's going on. There was we are the media. I like that phrase. So yeah, what's that mean for you? Why has that come about? That the fact that we need to be our own voice.
Yes. Well, again, there was no coverage being given, except it was fake news before fake news was even a term. Um, and so I tried to connect up with various media of the mainstream to get them to cover some of what was going on, and quickly realized it wasn't going to happen. There was a concerted effort to not have it covered. So I was sitting there one night chatting with somebody, one of the other people running the group, and I said, it's very clear we have to do this. We have to be the media. I said, oh, that's a good catchy little phrase. We are the media. We can't wait for media to cover it who will not. So that's where we are the media came from.
So we sort of see you're now progressing even further with, that's not really, I suppose, Standing Rock isn't climate change per se.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly land environment based. So where is the emphasis for you now? What do you think?
Yeah, actually, in many ways, these things are all connected. Standing Rock is climate change in the point that we have fossil fuel pipelines were the issue going under the rivers. And if one of those breaks there, that would affect 9 states in this country. So, in one way, it was climate change. Um, Climate change, though, to me, is the elephant in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
It's we've got our other issues, your issues, my issues. Climate change is the one we have to deal with, or the rest of the issues won't mean very much. So I moved from Standing Rock. Well, I didn't move away from them. I'm still involved with them. We still have, I think, 130,000 people in the group working on those issues. But I started adding more climate change to my personal agenda and realized also that we needed to unite more. We've got like 1,000 points in the sky, everybody doing great work, but we're wasting too much time and energy, in my mind, by not uniting into balls, that circles that connect and make sense, so that our efforts become more direct, more focused. Because just like at Standing Rock, the media was never going to help. Um, in my opinion, right now, the leaders we have worldwide, they're not going to help. If we wait for them on climate change or any of these, or even social justice, we'll probably be all dead and gone long before they act. So now we have to become the change, and we're seeing it. I paid attention quickly to the young people who were standing up, and early on, I had seen some things like about Greta Thunberg, and I thought, wow, if these young people can do that part, like we were so many years ago, we need to stand behind them now. And so, uniting people, standing behind the young people, and dealing with climate change to me is huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, I think that's very much a theme of a lot of the talks here as well. Is this need for us all to be on the same page? It doesn't matter whether we believe slightly differently, or really our own agendas have to be taken out of the picture, and that we've got this one thing that really should bring us all together, and that we all need to work together, and that ultimately it is for the next generations. I mean, whatever it is that we do, we are the legacy for our children's children and their children. Um, and it's probably about time they were listened to, don't you think?
Yeah, I would think so. You mentioned in introducing me that I was at been around a while, earned these gray hairs. I marched with Dr. King. I was just a puppy. I was a teenager. I fought against the Vietnam War. I did all those things back then. The big difference that I see is back then we had nobody supporting us. We were being told by our elders to shut up, sit down, and be nice. Um, and I'm not even pointing a finger at them. That's the way the world was then. We have changed dramatically. Now, as we have people standing up, some of we who are older, we're here. We know, we understand. We are the support. We are the backbone of this. And so I think that's really an incredibly huge difference. That, and there's so many more people involved. You know, these were all splinter efforts back in the 60s and 70s. They took root and they grew and they set the stage for what's going on now. But just like we look back to those times, I look back to Dr. King, to some of the other people involved, and I say thank you for what you did. You know, I'm your seventh generation or whatever. You've got a great point. I want 7 generations from now to look back and say thank you for what you did then, and not damn you for putting us in this place now.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for the younger generations, this medium that we're on now, this is their world. You know, they know this stuff. They've lived with this, so they've been born into it almost. And I think that's another big difference, isn't it? That back, I mean, in my day, you know, there's no way you would hear about what was going on the other side of the world. You just wouldn't. I know how Standing Rock affected me, and the fact that it came out on that world platform, and it's like, no, we can't let this happen. And it's not just that, but I think, you know, for a lot of us, I certainly was sitting in a place with all of this going on around us, feeling hopeless, feeling pretty pointless. What can we do? How can we help? It's never going to end. And then not only do you see something happening several thousand miles away, but you see thousands of people from around the world going, yeah, we all feel the same. And then you're doing it in prayer, and you're doing it peacefully, and you're standing in the front, very much like Indra was saying earlier, that whilst there is brutality in front of you, and no matter what they're doing to you, here is this line of peaceful, heart-filled people. And I just went, right, okay, you're not a lost cause anymore, human race. I will stand up, because I'd pretty much given up on the human race, thought, well, you're damned. So I think this is a fantastic medium to get the word out and to get people together. And it's just absolutely fabulous. I am quite wowed out to be a part of all of this, quite frankly.
Yeah, so am I. And my teachers always told me I would be here when this time came. And I was getting old enough, I was starting to think, maybe they were wrong. Turns out they were not. Here we are, playing our role in this and moving things ahead. And you're absolutely right. It is not pointless. It is not all dire and dread. Sometimes the messages come out that way, and that I think that's a mistake. There's the whole global element. You're absolutely right. When Standing Rock started, suddenly we were being contacted by groups, indigenous and non-indigenous, around the world. Great Britain was actually one place that was right in the forefront of that. I think we must have had a dozen groups around Great Britain contact us early on and say, hey, what's going on there? Can we do it that way? And then we started to see things popping up over there, and things about sacred sites. So that's why I was so interested when you all came. A few years before Standing Rock was I guess probably my last trip to Great Britain so far. And before I came over, I had asked permission to go into Stonehenge and do some ceremony. And I was absolutely amazed when they gave permission. And I was allowed to bring, I think, about 15 people in with me, and our large drum, our ceremonial drum. And I was told I would be able to open my pipe and have a fire in there. So I was in there. We did these ceremonies. They're recorded. Actually, I think Danny and Antigua are probably listening right now. They were in there with us. And then there was another 30 or 40 people around it. The energy of that in person was absolutely incredible. And I'd been to Stonehenge many times, but never done anything like this, of course. It's equally important as we use the social media, which obviously I use a lot. I had to learn it because, like you, it wasn't here when I came up. Um, but it's equally important to be at these places and or to see these places. We have to be able to feel them, smell them, touch them. That's a whole different level of connection. And so I think that's one too, because the spiritual part of this is just as important as the other parts. Um, I had a model that I've used before, if I can remember what I had. But anyway, it's action, prayer, education, and ceremony. To me, those are the four components that we really need to fight this battle. And we need to do it together. You know, you were mentioning all people coming together. That's the point of the medicine wheel. There's the four colors of people. Every other color is a mix. You know, I'm Mediterranean, so I guess I'm green. I don't know. Um, yes, I think that knowing we can win this is the critical piece. All the prophecies that talked about this time, prophecies of so many different cultures, talk about how it's not going to be our decision now. Do we live or die as a species? We have the ability to live. We are coming together. I see it more and more. When Standing Rock first started, um, my wife and I drove up there to be there for a while. And I remember going in, we stopped at a little luncheonette to have a bite to eat in the town up above. Actually, the town that the pipelines originally were going to go by until they remembered, whoops, there's white people in this town. And then they moved them. So we were sitting there having this lunch, and there were people at another table talking about what was going on. Again, it's fairly early on. And I'm hearing comments like, just despicable comments like, well, you know, it's just a bunch of Indians over there in the land. No one's going to pay any attention to them. That was the mentality. Standing Rock scared the heck of and woke up a lot of people. The mainstream never expected that kind of reaction. And so now it gets a little harder. The attacks against people, physically and online, happen more and more and more. We saw it a lot at Standing Rock. And we remind people of that, especially the young people, because it does happen.
Yeah.
And we just have to be ready for it. It is part of it. I see somebody's asking in there for the link to the Stonehenge ceremony.
Yeah.
I will put that up. I'll put it on the site later.
Fantastic. That would be great. We can share that out to people.
Okay.
I really interesting to hear you talking about kind of the work that you're doing now, and with what you had said to do with your own early experience involved with different protest campaigns. That everything was very splintered and there wasn't as much support from the elder generations then. And hearing with the work that you're doing now, it sounds very much like a big focus is about that, bringing it together and providing that elder support. And I was just wondering what support you see as being really important to different groups that are kind of bringing about change, and what are ways that people can support different change movements, particularly with online, but more generally with your experience.
That's a great question. I think in general, I see myself and other people who have done like I have and kicked around and made tons of mistakes and done some things right and just acquired a bunch of knowledge. Being a library, I'm a library with all these books put in me by all these different people. Before I go and head back to the spirit realm, I want to make sure I've given those books back out, especially to the young people, so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We're human. Let's make some new ones. Let's not repeat the old ones. There's no time for that. So I think that's really important. I think combining all the peoples, and there's some really excellent people talking about this now, all the different cultures, especially indigenous people, because the indigenous cultures still live much closer to the earth. Now, I have some indigenous blood, but I didn't grow up. I didn't even know I had that blood until I did DNA test some years back. But they do have that understanding of the earth. So we have young people, we have indigenous people, and then they have all of us. So sharing our cultures, not being afraid to share our cultures, share them in a good way, respectfully, but share what we're doing. And you'll see a bunch of people online now understanding that. I think another critical one goes back to the young people, not just giving to them what we have, but listening, really listening. I know elders in the past would say to me, Jim, even our own young people don't come and listen to us anymore. Well, yeah, because they expect it the old way, where they would sit and talk and talk and talk. That doesn't work anymore, especially, as Louisa was saying, with this virtual realm. You want to hear everybody. So when we do circles on here, we have everybody on, young, old, the four colors. Everybody gets a chance to speak, and everyone has something to add to the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's some of the things that occur to me anyway.
No, fantastic. You mentioned as well there to do with the protection of sacred sites, and obviously there's a lot of discussion that we're having here to do with the protection of Stonehenge, and it's great to hear your connection with Stonehenge. But can you tell us a bit more about what's kind of happening over there in terms of the need for protecting sacred sites?
Yeah, that's been an ongoing battle, as it is in many places, not just there and here. Here, a lot of the sacred sites are under assault once again. We just had an administration for 4 years that valued absolutely nothing at all. Sacred, non-sacred, it doesn't matter. Life, anything. That's my impression anyway, and the impression of many. So many of these sacred sites, the mining interests were allowed to use them, or were starting to be given permission to do so. Foreign countries and companies were being able to acquire them. Apache Flats comes to mind in the Southwest, but I could go on and on. There's a whole list. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. But if you Google, you'll find a whole list of sacred sites here, mostly Native American, but not all Native American. Sites that we really need. I think we need to protect all these sites globally. And there's another place I would love to see us come together. And these things are so interconnected. Climate change, sacred sites, social justice. We've got to be doing them all to make it effective for the kind of change we need. And so when I first heard about your organization, I went, wow, there's something evolving around Stonehenge that I have a personal connection to. But I didn't even need to have that personal connection. I could have looked and I would have said, no, that makes sense. We need these places. We can't allow them to be taken away. And so again, it's up to us. All these things are up to us, the people, the mass of people. Those of us who are the population of Earth, who are not doing all we can to destroy it, are 97 or 98%. That's an overwhelming majority. Now, not all believe in what we're doing. Of course, we have the naysayers. We always will. But we can make this change if we continue to work together. And I see us doing that. Being here today and this amazing conference you put together for 2 days is just another example of how we're doing that.
Yeah, quite agree. And I was sort of thinking, listening to you, there's lots of things going around in my head when I'm sitting there listening to you, so I can ask 101 questions. But one of them is, I mean, obviously, this is the work that we need to do. But I mean, I see a real relationship between our lack of the opportunity to have a connection with nature. I mean, as you've mentioned with the indigenous peoples, they've grown up actually living much more in tune with nature. But we have millions of people that are grown up in tarmac and concrete. They don't know. I mean, we've had in lockdown here so many people moaning about people who go out and leave their litter and behave in a disrespectful manner. And obviously they're going to because they don't have a relationship. So one of the main things is, how do we really start to teach people, remind people what that relationship is? You know, I mean, I know for me, it's fine. I live in the country. I've had therefore a level of relationship always with nature, but we take it for granted. There's plenty of people who wouldn't even know what it was. If they get to see a tree, they're lucky. So yeah, what do you think is the you know, ways we can really help on that level?
Yeah, these are really good questions. I mean, we could do a show on each one of these questions. They're so deep. Um, it is and can be difficult. You're right. For years in the 90s, I lived in Colorado, and I did again recently. Um, I ran an environmental learning center for Colorado State University. We brought groups of kids in to that place for teaching. I had connected with a lot of Native American friends there, and we also did some cross-cultural programming. But mostly it was to get young people into nature. We brought kids up from Denver, only 60 miles away from where this was, who, like you said, had never stepped off a cement walkway. This is Colorado. Colorado is all nature. And so one of the things we did there was we combined efforts. I was teaching at the university. I had friends teaching in the K-12 system. I had other friends who were running youth corps, and we would bring them all together to work together and learn together. That was a really excellent model. Not too easy to do. It worked because we all knew each other in these different venues, and the school system was supportive. But any place, again, that we can bring people together to experience these things, I think is great. That's the education part of what I was saying. Um, so it's Apex. Somebody I see asked there's great questions showing up there. I hope we get to a few of them. And I've got some from Frank coming from Pine Ridge. This is great, people. I hope we're hitting some points.
Well, there are some questions there. Yeah, there's just this one here from Carlotta. I guess you mentioned earlier to do with giving, recognizing kind of the indigenous peoples and what wisdom and knowledge they have in terms of holding the sacred and that connection with the land. And there's this question here from Carlotta of how do you think young people from the West and from European countries can best support the struggles and movements of indigenous peoples around the world?
Wow. Start by listening to programs like this and spending a couple days in conferences and retreats like this. So you start to understand some of the issues. It's not that hard with the virtual realm. It's really not. Look around, go on Facebook and look for some groups that might interest you, or some of the other social media. I know the young people now have moved into other social media platforms I don't even use. Mm-hmm. Find some of those groups and hook up, and then start doing your homework. For me, when I started learning from Native American folks, it was a long time ago, not just Native American, but other indigenous groups, including some of my trips to Great Britain. I learned from some Brits over there too, who were connected way, way, way back. You don't really have to go far. You can start to find interesting things and then put your questions out there and then pay attention. You know, there's an old line, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That's how it happened to me. I'd been kicking around doing a lot of this. I wanted to know more. I wanted to help. When I got to Colorado State around 1990, I guess, I'd already done quite a bit and worked with a few different groups of people. But then suddenly I had people show up at this center and invite me into things and just started teaching me. And I didn't even realize what was going on. It was just what I did every day. And then I started going to Central America, and I met in with some Mayan folks. So then you have to let it happen, but you have to do some legwork, get out there, connect in with things. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Some may even get angry at you. I know they did to me, but when I was young and doing those things, you didn't see very many people who look like me mixed into the indigenous groups, and some of them didn't want that. I get that, it's fine. We all have our things we're going through, but don't be afraid to ask. Always be respectful, and you will be taught. You will be taught. We have more and more now indigenous folks showing up, like I am, to share what they know. And people who are many, many years back, my chief, Chief Two Dog, he and I do radio shows together. And we've paused for a bit, but we bring people on and we discuss these issues. Well, he's connected way back. So it's that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Thinking of Chief Phil Lane is all over the internet. Phil is a great person. So there's a lot of places and people you can connect him with.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hopefully we get some of those links to some of those things like the radio show that we can share with the audience here. And particularly on that point of listening to Indigenous people, you said there were some questions there from Pine Ridge. Did you want to?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, from Frank, he's thanking everybody involved here. And they're glad to be listening, and they're actually hearing quite well. So that's good. Frank is mentioning some of the difficult times when Standing Rock was going on. And he and some of his folks were up there for most of Pine Ridge. I think they went up maybe a few months after it started. And they got attacked first by the local people. I think that was pretty well documented. And then by the supposed law enforcement that was involved. But then he's the first one who put me aware of some of the internal attacks that were happening. And so he just wanted me to mention that to those who are now fighting these efforts. Be aware those things will happen. And whenever you're making waves, when the establishment hears things like change, peace, oh my God, unity, they get very, very nervous. They get scared because they see what's happening. We all saw the millions of people who were marching in the streets right before the pandemic started. Interesting timing. That'll be happening again. And so you can't let it put you off. It will disturb you. We're humans. I had so many things thrown at me when I was involved, from not being red to being too red to being too old to all kinds of stories made up. Why? I mean, awful malicious stories that made no sense. They were things I supposedly did in places I was never even at. And that was just me. I mean, it happened to tons of people and many much worse than myself. So you have to be aware of that and don't accept the lies. It's the same page that people in politics have been using lately. Our former, that feels so good, former president is the king of lies. And we have other world leaders the same way. That's what was being done and will be done again. Just when we stick together and when these things come up, we have to talk about them. Excuse me, my allergies are really bad. I apologize. Oh, good. Okay. So I'm seeing lots of things here. And Carlotta, you're very welcome. I'm glad that answered your question. What else do you want to take off of there, Jonathan?
You were talking then and actually thinking back to your 4 points of action, prayer, education, and ceremony. I'm wondering, with that point about having to face the stuff that's thrown at you that isn't pleasant and still remain in good heart. I mean, I certainly think that I find, but do you think that is really where the prayer and the ceremony comes into its own, in that it helps you to be able to maintain that heart and not I don't know, fall foul of your anger or lose that strength, if you like, if you're doing it from prayer and ceremony?
Yes, I think that's a good part of it. When that starts to happen again, being human, of course, it hits us even when you know it's coming and you've lived through it before. And then the lies start, and then you see some people within what you're doing begin to believe the lies. Again, very much what was happening in the last 4 years over here. It's kind of hard to deal with. And then when they add in your family and friends and start making up stories about them too, because they will do or say anything to try to stop what's going on. The more visible you get, the bigger target on your back. That's a given. You guys have probably learned it all already, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will. That's just the nature of it, and it is the prayer and the ceremony that helps a lot. The education can help people understand that these lies are out there. Don't believe everything you hear. The big word we used to, those of us attack. There's some document was created with a whole bunch of us in it who were supposedly these evil beings. The education piece, yeah, we would laugh about. Okay, how do we get the message through? How do we let people know this is happening? Because we can't afford to be sidetracked. Exactly what they want is people fighting with people.
Yeah.
And the biggest justification for some of this was these people would come on and say, well, I heard that. And then they would come up with some ridiculous claim. That was it. That was all they had for, I guess it's more than some of our politicians have, but that's what they base these things on. The big lie, unfortunately, works with some humans. So we have to avoid that. Keep going, do the ceremony, send the prayers up, teach every step of the way. We're teaching today. I mean, we're sharing thoughts and ideas, but we're also teaching.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Are there any more questions there, Jonathan?
There's a lot of gratitude in the chat for your answers and for the depth that you've given and sharing the experience in there from people. Is there any other questions coming in down the bottom here?
Here's one more from Pine Ridge, if I may.
Yeah, please.
This is from the young people in the group. They have 22 people there now, and 12 of them at the moment are young people, which to them is teens on down to their youngest person there is 7. Okay. So they're saying they want to continue to connect with all young people. And they've done a good job of that. The young people are connecting. They're not looking at what color they are, what gender they are, how old they are, nothing. So they're saying, please tell everyone to, yes, speak with us. Don't speak down to us. Don't speak up to us. Speak with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I think that's when we talk now, we have to put aside what we are. Mm-hmm. Put that over in the corner. When you go into ceremony, you're supposed to leave everything in a basket outside. All your worries, all your issues, you leave it in the worry basket. That's what we need to do right now. So we can sit like this and talk, even when we disagree. Most important, when we disagree. We don't have to agree all the time, but we have to solve these issues. And then if we want to go back to being goofy humans and fighting with each other over color of our skin or how we style our hair, okay, go do it if that makes you happy, but not right now. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, Jonathan, but I wanted to hit the young people there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it kind of brings in that point of, the focus being, if we are going to kind of make the change, it's going to be together. And as much as we can be doing to unify and cross these boundaries that there are to be working together, despite whatever efforts there are to splinter things up, that's incredibly important. And I know you mentioned before about the focus on unifying groups as much as possible intergenerationally and across kind of different places as well as being a focus of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think, oh, good. We have a few minutes. I just put in there somebody, Vicky. Oh, dear. Vicky Stinchcomb. Did I get that right? Did I get close? Oh,
yeah.
Well. Okay.
Sounds about right.
Okay. She has a question about pace. I think that's a really good question. And it's coming up a lot. She says, we're in an emergency, but it feels wrong to rush and put pressure on. I advocate slow, but in the unknown, I understand hurry. That is a dilemma for many people. Many of the young people now want to function in just the action part of that 4-stage model that I thought up a while back. And I understand that. I truly understand that. That's how we were in the 60s as well. But we can't just function in the action part. So luckily we have some who function in the other parts more. Between them all, we can get balance. But I think everybody should be using part of action, part of education, part of prayer and ceremony, whatever that means to you. You know, again, they don't have to be. But we do need to not waste time. Time is short. Finally, we've at least accepted that climate change not only is here, but it's advancing so much faster than we ever could have imagined. We don't have a lot of time. You know, I listen to some of the politicians, our own current president, who I think is making some real genuine efforts, but he's talking about 2050. That's way too late. We don't have that luxury anymore. Sacred sites, we don't have the luxury to take our time. They'll be gone. They're going to bulldoze them over or turn them into tourist traps or whatever else they're going to do with them. And I can do that with any of a social justice. No, we can't keep persecuting people who look different than the main people in any population. So, yeah, I hear you, Vicky. I understand your dilemma, but I really think action has to be number one right now. And then we'll balance out as we go along.
Yeah. No, I with you on that one, Jim, as well. I mean, I look at what's happening with HS2 and the thousands of trees that they are pulling down overnight. I mean, 108 different woodlands, and they just won't stop. And you just can't afford to do that, and we can't afford to allow it to happen. They're irreplaceable. You know, it's yeah. So there is no time. There's no time for that sort of thing. You can't wait till tomorrow because the trees are down tomorrow. They're going to take another 100, 200, 300 years to grow back the way they were. And in the meantime, you've lost an irreplaceable colony of bats. So, yes, it is slowly, but it is also at the same time, act now. There's no more. My term, I think I keep saying, is there's you've just got to get over yourself because there's no more time for me. It's got to be
I love it.
us, really. And that comes to leaving your burdens in the burden basket at the door, isn't it? And as Indra was saying earlier, you know, the camps can be difficult because you bring your own issues, but actually our job of work individually is to deal with our issues. Our job of work together is to be together and to move forward in a positive way. And it's our job to make that happen. It's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. And at Standing Rock, it was fascinating because where we were camped, next to us were some local people from the reservation. There was some French people on the other side. There were some people from, I think it was Nepal. Yeah, next to them. Anyway, we had a little UN right around us. Now, we couldn't even understand each other's languages, but we totally understand what we were there for. And yep, we just put aside all that other rubbish. And we were there as human beings to deal with this issue.
Yeah, no, fantastic. That kind of balance as well that you talk about of there will be those who are more involved on the action side of things, and there will be those who are more involved in holding a sacred space. And I kind of also wonder there's kind of that within all of us, you know, sometimes we may be more getting involved in the action.
Yes.
And like you talk about the importance of that reconnecting, recentering around ceremony and prayer, all for ourselves, so we can stay a bit more centered and balanced through the challenges that there are in being involved in these movements.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. For me personally, I mean, I shifted into action mode when Standing Rock began, and most of my work was in that. Now I'm shifting back into prayer and ceremony more, but I'm also balancing with my action and I'm teaching. So it's, yeah, you're right. We have to change our own balance based on the moment too.
Hey, fantastic.
So, do we have any more questions from the chat?
Just scrolling up and down. I'm wanting to make sure that if, as well, there's been some people who've replied to things, just checking those as well. Yeah, so Becky's kind of in response to that pace of needing to move faster than in the 60s. Becky was saying that she works in the water pollution and plastic, and we didn't have this 20 years ago. So kind of there is a need, I guess, kind of agreeing with what you were saying there, of keeping the pace for action at the moment, not slowing down too much, but kind of recognizing, we've just been talking there about recognizing the balance with it.
Yeah, and I know there's a question from Saoirse as well about how can we connect with the folks at Pine Ridge? So you're saying with the young, the young people are connecting with each other, but how is the way that we can help to build that connection?
I guess once again, well, it can always be difficult. The best thing is to go to the tribal office and ask there. Okay, we'd like to connect up with the young people and see who responds. That's probably the best way, and that's any reservation. I would say that's the best way.
Okay.
We've worked with some folks in the Navajo reservation in the past, so yeah. And I'm hoping sacred places is to me something that may help us come together, especially Indigenous people. So I'm hoping to start putting that out there as well. My tribe was the first tribe who passed a climate change emergency resolution here in the States. I brought it to him. The council talked about it, and my chief supported it, and so we passed it. I would like to see something done around sacred places, whether they're natural ones, whether they're stone, like Stonehenge, doesn't matter. So I'm going to try working on some of that, because that's something we all have. All cultures have their sacred places.
Yeah, that's something that we want to focus on as well. And, I mean, I certainly personally have an idea that if we can coordinate the work we do in sacred sites, because then they're not sacred for no reason. They hold energy, they hold power, they hold all of the intent that they've been given over the thousands of years that they've been what they are. And if we can coordinate what we do, it's like, one drum bangs loudly, two drums can drum up some magic, but you get a whole circle together, and that's where the magic really exists. So if we can coordinate what we do and all be in our sacred sites around the world at the same time, doing the same thing with the same intent, then we pack a punch.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do. And that the circle is so critical to everything in life and in the universe, actually. And so when I was taught doing prayers by many different cultures, including my own prominent ones, you talk about healing the sacred hoop wherever it is broken. That's healing the circle. Well, we need to heal the whole circle as well as our individual circles. So yeah, circle is critical. It's the first thing I was taught. My first book, there's a lot in there about circle, because it's what everything is connected to. There's no beginning and no end to circle. So we want to continue to work in those circles and realize we're all in one circle. The medicine wheel is made up of different colors, but it's one circle. And that's absolutely critical.
Oh, absolutely. And what you kind of described there in terms of in terms of that, bring that together for the sacred sites, and how that connects with all of the other challenges that we're facing collectively at the moment. They aren't all separate things, separate issues off aside from one another. It is the same wounds and the same challenges that there are from one and the other that are leading us to be feeling disconnected to the land and not respecting and appreciating the land, to not be respecting and honoring different peoples, and also, for losing our connection to the sacred sites. So all of those things all feed in together there. So yeah, it'd be kind of fantastic to continue all of these discussions kind of more in the future, and in terms of how we can build and continue we've invited you here today to speak to us about the kind of the supporting the online campaigns and supporting movements online, and the work that you've been doing there for Standing Rock and all of the other campaigns there. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear about how that's all come about. And this is where we say as well, Jim, you've been a great support for us over the last year in our group building up. So we're really grateful for all of the support that you've given us. But big thank you for joining us on here today, and thank you so much for all of the wisdom and experience that you've shared here with us and everybody.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you guys, and I especially thank all my teachers, because we keep passing it down. So let's keep passing it down and try to add a little to it each time.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the 2 days.